Fabulous. So a warm welcome from PHA to our guest today. Wonderful characters from the organisation called Mentell. So welcome everybody, and welcome everybody as well that's watching this. And let's first of all find out who you all are. So if you'd like to just introduce yourself, your part maybe in Mentell, and briefly what brought you to Mentell.
Hi, good afternoon everybody. My name is Jo Miller. I'm the community manager at Mentell. I've had that paid role for 2 years now after being a volunteer for 3 years previously. What brought me to Mentell? Most difficult thing in the world is losing my son to suicide. Sometimes it gets me like this, sometimes it doesn't. But I think when you can see yourself on screen, it really hits you. So I can talk about it a million times out in the community doing my job, but when you see yourself telling yourself, it kind of smacks you a bit hard. So I lost my son to suicide 6 years ago now, which brought me to Mentell, just to maybe have a change somewhere, you know. I know I save lives. I know I'm really good at my job. And you know, without people with lived history in Mentell, we wouldn't be what we are. It's the lived history in Mentell that is the power. So it was formed in 2016 by a group of random guys, all reaching out on Facebook, expressing crappy thoughts, a couple of suicidal thoughts in there as well. They all met in the scout hut in Stockport and realised the power of talking is huge to a group of random strangers who only ever have your best interests at heart. So that was how we were born, in the scout hut in Stockport. Yeah, and it's grown massively from there. You know, we have the guys that we hold the space for, men, but we also have a big community team, which is the people on the ground that are making the difference, that are driving men to Mentell. I'm going to hand you over maybe back to Maureen or to Christian, and they can tell you more about what happens in the group. So thank you.
Great, thank you and welcome, Jo. So let's go Christian, because I know we know Harry, don't we? So Christian, would you like to introduce yourself and what's driven you to Mentell?
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. So I've been with the charity now volunteering for about the last 2.5 years, which is when I first met Jo. So I've in the process of actually training to become a counsellor, and I joined the charity so I could try and get some more experience. And then I had a couple of different life events that happened in relation to my own family, and ended up leaning on the charity quite heavily for support myself. And then about 6 months ago, started a paid position with them 2 days a week as the affiliate manager. So my role is to help other people if they want to set up their own support group. And as a charity, we then share all of our policies, procedures, and safeguarding with them. And we mentor them over a period of around 6 months until they have a very robust service that they can offer out into the community as well.
Brilliant, fabulous. Thank you. And Harry?
Hey, so I'm Harry, a well-known face and name in PHA. So I joined Mentell beginning of March, supporting the work they do down here in Surrey and raising awareness of men's mental health. And actually, Maureen, it's your fault that I'm here with Mentell, because right back at the beginning when we started PHA, you said, oh, you should get in touch with Andy at Mentell, and that's kind of just evolved into me now working for Mentell 2 days a week as a community support down here. So I've got to say thank you to you, Maureen, for putting me in this position. But actually, it's been really beneficial for me. That I use the service every Monday night on Zoom. I went through my own mental health challenges during lockdown for a whole host of reasons, and actually I realised recently a lot of that still I hadn't processed properly and fully, and there was still stuff there that I needed to get out of my system. So it's such a joy to be able to be a member and work for the charity at the same time. Just knowing that if someone picks up something that sees mental on it, I've done my job here.
Fantastic. I didn't know it was my fault, Harry.
100% your fault, Maureen.
Got a lot to answer for. So, which is brilliant. So the origin, so when did Mentell actually start? How many years ago is it now?
2015, 2016, that was kind of like where the guys kind of met in the scout hut. I just didn't realise where it was going to go and how big it was going to go. So yeah, about 2015, 2016.
Fantastic. And so knowing how Mentell runs, any of you facilitators?
Yes, so I've been a facilitator now for about the last year and a half. So as a facilitator, what we tend to do is if somebody's wanting to volunteer with the charity, we get them to come along to a number of circles first, just to experience what it's like. And then we start them on a pathway once they've had an interview with us that trains them from being a support to a shadow and then to a fully qualified facilitator. So once you're qualified, you're then able to hold space for other service users. And we always have 2 people facilitating at any one time. So we have the main facilitator and we have a support, and that's just for safeguarding reasons, just in case anybody discloses anything or is triggered in some way. So we've got 2 people managing to facilitate and hold the space accordingly. So we generally have no more than 12 people in a circle at a time. And that's because the sessions last for a total of 2 hours. So it's just to give enough time for everybody to be able to speak and share anything that they want to share. And at the very start of a circle, we get guys to check in with a number between 1 and 10. So 1 is being that you're in a very challenging place right now, and 10 that you're in a great place. So to give you some context, my equilibrium day to day is a steady 7. Anything less than that, I'm struggling to some degree, and anything more than that, I've had some good news of some kind. So everybody's scale is slightly different, you know, on how they present with stress or joy of some description. And we give the guys who've got the numbers closest to 1 the opportunity to share first. But there's no pressure, no obligation to talk if they don't want to. We have some guys that access the service for the first time, and they may not speak for a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks until they feel comfortable. And we'll never pressure anybody into talking either. There's no obligation whatsoever.
Brilliant. And so as well as meeting face to face, do you still meet online? Because I know luckily, fabulously, Mentell went online in lockdown.
Yeah, that's right. We were very fortunate, in fact, because we were already doing all the back end stuff in relation to the internet and setting up the online circles. So as soon as COVID hit, it was all implemented and in place. So all of a sudden, we went from being this very localized charity, only kind of servicing around 50 people in the area, to going national. And then I think within the space of a year, I think we had about 1,000 people that we were as service users, and now we're close to 3,000 as well. You know, we get recognition from local borough councils, the NHS, and also the National Lottery with funding as well. So we have guys actually joining us from different countries as well. We've got some people in America, some in Southern Ireland, some over in South Africa as well. So we're quite amazed really at how the message of Mentell has spread and how it's actually been spread online as well. So we do have 6 regular circles that meet on a Monday evening online from 7 till 9. And then we have 6 local circles in the South Manchester, Cheshire area as well. And that's either on a Monday or a Thursday evening. Fantastic.
That's so super. And in lockdown, one of your originator facilitators, don't know really what to call him, he held an online circle to demonstrate for us for ladies.
Yeah.
So do you remember, Joe, we took part in that? And so it was really interesting how powerful Zoom is versus face-to-face. And is that still the case? Because of course, face-to-face, there is a different atmosphere, isn't there? Because you can physically see the whole person and there's that atmosphere. Is it still working as effectively as it was from my experience in lockdown?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there is a difference between face-to-face and online, but again, it makes it so accessible, you know, especially for individuals who are disabled, who have some kind of health condition or health concern which stops them from being able to leave the house, or they might just be neurodiverse in some way, or they might have agoraphobia, for example. You know, so actually limiting the amount of roadblocks to somebody accessing our service by having face-to-face sessions and online sessions, it really makes us as accessible as we possibly can be for service users.
Brilliant. And we know, kind of like in a generalistic kind of way, it's kind of understood that men are not as good talking about their emotions and taking actions over their emotional health as maybe women are. And so how easy is it to actually, for a gentleman, to just begin that process of speaking out? Because I guess for the very first time in their mind, it's like, I wouldn't even know where to start. And then being clouded with the emotional and mental health problems they might be experiencing. How do they actually, say, for example, it's me, imagine I'm a man for a moment and I'm coming to one of the circles, face to face, for example. What would I expect from maybe walking into the door of the venue?
Sure. So you'd have one of the facilitators or the supports kind of greet you at the door and just welcome you into the space, and it just make you feel comfortable straight off the bat. And then once we start the circle, we have an opening script, and that just tells us what language and behavior is allowable in that space and what they can expect, what the logistics are of the space and how the circle runs. So one of the biggest things as facilitators is we model our own vulnerability as well. So we don't intellectualize this process of holding space, and it's not like an us versus them. All the guys sit in a circle, which is evident when we are face to face. Online, it's like a virtual circle, obviously. But it just shows that there's no kind of like us or them. You know, we're speaking from a position of lived experience and lived struggles that we've overcome or that we might still be trying to manage on a day-to-day basis. So you said something there as well about guys finding it difficult to open up about their emotions. This is like a yes and a no. As soon as you give permission for somebody to be vulnerable, then they will meet you in kind. And that all starts with modeling vulnerability as well. So again, because we're right there in the thick of it with them and we display and model that vulnerability, they reciprocate in kind as well. And one of the biggest things as well with the core tenets of what we do at Mentell, these 7 principles, you know, safety, confidentiality, respect, freedom from judgment, freedom from advice, and freedom to simply share, or you can listen. It's up to you. So within that, we're not trying to fix people. We're not trying to give them advice. We're not trying to judge what they're going through. And we're not trying to create or interject banter because we don't know how to witness and hold people's emotions. We simply allow somebody to be and express whatever they need to express without trying to interject what we think they need or what we think that they should do. And that is so incredibly powerful. It's so simple. And that's what we actually need. We've got the solution to what it is, and it's community. It's just giving a way of us actually being and allowing ourselves to be with each other.
Brilliant. And if, say, for example, you're a gentleman that joins the group, whether it's online or face to face, and it might be maybe the first session where actually my idea is I'm just going to listen. How does that help them just by listening?
Yeah, again, just seeing that modeled vulnerability and seeing a space where men are so different than how they are in the outside world. And I mean, what I mean by the outside world is like down at the pub with your mates where you just got banter or you're cajoling each other and you're kind of just keeping everything at a very surface level, and you might be wearing a mask in your day-to-day life. Whereas when somebody comes into our space, they see guys articulating themselves, witnessing each other, holding each other, responding to each other in a way which has real mature masculinity to it. You know, in our society, we might have these systemic ways of being as men, or the messages that we might receive of what is a man, what is masculinity, what is our role within society to our wives, to our partners, to our children, to our parents. You know, and this space that we have here just allows them to be whoever they are without the expectation that we need them to be something other than who they are.
And I suppose as well, listening to other people's stories, being that outside perspective, you can, because often when we're in our own challenges, it's difficult to see a way out, but often somebody outside can actually say, oh, do you know what? Especially say, for example, somebody has got a downer on themselves, somebody from outside goes, oh no, it's so much better. And are you finding that that kind of perspective learning is helping people as well?
Yeah, 100%. As soon as guys come into our space and anything and everything gets spoken about, you know, from anxiety, depression, you know, childhood trauma and relationship problems, problems with work, problems with how they view themselves or society or the world at large. As soon as they see other people articulate similar situations, the relief that you see on that individual, like the shoulders dropping, them all of a sudden making eye contact where they might have just been looking at the floor when they first came into the space, it is absolutely palpable. And it's that shared experience. You know, we might have a young man come into the space, for example, who might just be saying something and you can see the energy is coiled up in him like a spring, you know, and he's just been holding stuff together for so long that he's about to burst at any moment. And he's expressed a, you know, a smidgen of what he's dealing with. And then an older gentleman in the space says, I've been where you are, mate. It's like, keep going. You're doing the best that you possibly can. It does get better. I was exactly where you are a couple of years ago. And all you have to do is just keep breathing, just keep putting one foot in front of the other, mate, and you'll get there. And again, all of a sudden he's looking up, his shoulders have dropped, his energy's relaxing. And then I'll talk to that guy in the break, or they might have a chat, you know, on the way to the cars after the session. And again, it's just this felt sense of somebody knows what I'm going through without trying to fix me.
Yeah, and I suppose it's comforting as well as encouraging. So that's pretty magical, isn't it, really, to achieve that in just, how long are the sessions?
So the sessions themselves last for 2 hours. So they generally go from 7 o'clock at night until 9 o'clock with roughly a 10-minute break in between. And that's just to make sure that everybody's got enough space to actually be able to share. So that's why we try and cap it at 12 men per circle. But again, sometimes people might come for a couple of sessions and not talk. Sometimes they might just be at the first session and all of a sudden it's just like an epiphany for them to be in a space which is so unlike anything that they've ever been in before. And obviously every person's journey is different. Equally, we've had some guys that come into our space, realize it's not for them, and then we'll try and signpost us as something else which might be more beneficial. You know, so we're not, there's no ego involved in any of this for us. It's simply trying to give the individual what they need. And sometimes it might not be our service, but we'll try and point them to something that would be more appropriate for their needs as well.
Brilliant. And so, Harry, can I ask you, because you said you've actually taken part as I don't know, do you call them clients?
As a member.
Circle members?
Yeah, members.
Members, circle members. So as your, let's say, for example, your first experience, if you wouldn't mind sharing, how was that for you?
My first reaction joining the circle, I was just like, wow, I can say what I need to say and nobody's going to judge me for it. Nobody's going to attempt to give me advice. I can just open up my heart and just spill everything out and get all of that trauma and all that, excuse my French, all that shit I've been carrying around with me for the past few years. I can just dump it somewhere and I can go through the rest of my week and not even worry about it because I've got it out of my system. Because over the past couple of years, everyone attempted to give advice. Everyone attempted to judge me for what I was saying. You know, it came to a point where I was like, if I say something, is somebody going to phone the police and have me sectioned? It actually got to that point. And just being in that circle, I was like, wow, I can just simply say whatever I want to say. And just coming out of that first circle, I was like, even if I don't have a particular challenge that week or I feel much better, I'm still going to keep coming because you start to really understand and relate to other people's stories. Even though you don't have the same experience, there's some form of learning in there for you as well. And I really benefit from listening to other people and just being there so that somebody else, another guy, knows that there is somebody there who's going to be there to listen to them. Like, I wish I knew about this service 2-3 years ago when I was down in the doldrums where I would have been consistently 1s and 2s and for a long period of time. And like, we'll come on to this a bit later, but that's why I'm so passionate about going out in the community, going out into the community and just shouting about Mentell and the service that it offers.
Brilliant. And talking of going into the community, spreading the word of Mentell, Joe, you are, I know you're an amazing community worker. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your community working?
Yeah, sure. So when we originally first started doing the community work, it was just a poster in a carrier bag, and I was walking around town just, you know, popping them in the libraries, popping them anywhere really. I was just a bit of a pest. I'd just put them anywhere. Until where we are now, we actually run campaigns. So one of our major campaigns is called Turn Your Bar Blue. And we realised that it works being in certain venues where men are. So for instance, we have the Turn Your Bar Blue campaign. So these are our beer mats that we have. We host 1,000 pubs host our stock. On the back of this beer mat is a quote of one of our service users, and it says, "It was good to be among a group of men speaking openly about their feelings and showing concern for each other. So in each pack, there's 12 live quotes that go in the pub. That beer mat alone brings in 45% of men that find their way for some support come just from a beer mat. It's massive, it's huge. We have over 1,000 pubs that host our stock. We also do it in barbershops, we do it in gyms, tattoo shops, anywhere that men are going to frequent. And there's a bit of a saying by Desmond Tutu, and it's like, we need to find out why we don't, hang on, I'm going to go back there. We need to stop pulling the men out the water at the bottom. What we need to do is go upstream and find out why they're falling in the first place. And that's, I love that little sort of quote. I just find that that's my job. You know, we can advertise as much about Mentell services online and about our groups, but if you need feet on the grounds in the community that are finding people, you know, finding the doctors, surgeons, finding the social prescribers, getting the pubs, getting the gyms. So you make it a real community event. So the whole community becomes involved with it. We share it on Facebook. So for instance, we're doing a big campaign in Surrey, which is where Harry is now. Harry and I have pounded the streets in Surrey, and we've made some massive noise down there, you know, people are emailing in now asking what is this? Can we be part of it? Can we sign our pub up? In I think about a month, we set up 100 venues.
Wow.
Throughout Surrey. So that's, you know, potentially 100 men, you know, that can just find that one beer mat. So yeah, that's kind of the community work I do, just to be a bit vocal and find out where we can get some stock, because it massively does work. It goes hand in hand, you know, getting men to group is crucial. And that's the community side of it, which is what I love, you know.
And also, because here I have these in my car wherever I go, and they're on the back seat. So even on the back seat, people can see in the car. The car's not worth stealing, so they're not looking at the car in terms of we'll steal the car, but what they can do is see these on the back seat. And one of the profound, I work with people, and I talk about Mentell an awful lot because it's a really valuable support. Now, one of the challenges is getting men to actually go. That is one of the challenges which I'd like to ask you about in a moment. But for a lot, just to know that Mentell is there can be incredibly valuable in terms of keeping them afloat. Just knowing that they're there. So I know I've recommended Mentell to many wives, individuals, wives, sisters, mothers, etc., and passing on, and not telling them to force them to go, but just to let them know that the service is there, and even just, you know, sharing a leaflet or a beer mat or a business card, and they might go and look into it. They might not turn up, but it has helped them in some way. Yeah, does that make sense? And so thinking about how we can influence people to actually turn up. How do we get to do that? What are the ways that is the most useful, or what are the things that are not useful that we should avoid doing? Because we've all got good hearts that we want people to be feeling their best and seeing themselves as we see them, because so many people are great at critically judging themselves and thinking they're doomed and not good enough and so on. And we can see a different story. Can you give us some tips on what we can do and what we should avoid doing?
I think Christian will be good at this one.
Sure. So it's a really difficult one, this, because there is that fear of the unknown, you know, and what we try and do as volunteers out in the community is talk about our lived experience, you know, and share that with them. And something that we offer is a free 10-minute phone call with one of our employees called Craig. And that 10-minute phone call, if a guy has that, it's not for them to unload or to talk about all their issues. It's simply for them to see who we are, what we do, what they can expect when they come into our space. And if they have that phone call, they're 62% more likely to access our service. So it's just taking away that fear factor of the unknown, taking away as many roadblocks as possible that would stop somebody coming into our service. That being said, I know guys that have come into our service and they've been aware of us for the last 6 months, but this is the first time that they've stepped through that door. Or they'll come to our space, they'll drive up, sit outside in the car 1 week, then just go away, come to the front door the next week, go away, and then finally come in on the 3rd week. Everybody's process is different. You know, if they've not got somebody who's able to tell them what it's like, if they don't have that kind of sharing of vulnerability from someone who's been in our spaces, then it is difficult for them, and we appreciate that. But as a charity, we try to be as conscientious as we can in limiting those roadblocks to somebody accessing our service. So that's why we do the work that we do in the community. You know, it's just sharing our lived experience as facilitators, sharing the stuff that we've been through, even if, you know, it's the female members of our charity who don't access our circles, but they do it because they have men in their lives who have been through struggles themselves, you know, and they can see the effects of that. So we recognize that it can be difficult for guys, you know, on a mental, emotional, physical level to come into our space, but we try and make it as accessible and welcoming as we possibly can do for them.
That triggers a memory for me many years ago, and it was my neighbour's 40th birthday party, and the sitting in the car and being too scared to get out is profound.
Yep.
I remember getting all ready, makeup on, looking as good as I could, and then I just got in the car. I couldn't do it, and I just broke down in tears. Just couldn't do it. Just couldn't drive to a place full of strangers. Just couldn't do it. My mental health was in a great place, but I just couldn't do it. So I thoroughly understand how torturous, and it literally is torturous when you're suffering from that. But it's great to know that people do and will try again, and each time it gets easier. So imagine I've got a husband that needs to come and see you, and he won't. What are the things I should and shouldn't do, or couldn't, you know, maybe do? It's like,
you could more than rather than berating them or kind of chastising them for a situation that they're in, is say, look, would it be helpful to talk to somebody, you know, within the charity to see what it's like? And then we can put them in contact with myself, with Joe, with Harry, with somebody else, and we can have a chat with them about what it's like. And if they feel more comfortable talking to a guy, it's more than likely going to be a guy that they can talk to. And again, just we will have a bit of an open share with them on the phone as well, you know, just to kind of break down that barrier again. It's so hard when it's a loved one, you know, like you said, if it's a partner, a daughter, you know, a relation of some kind, and you can see somebody struggling, but they're reluctant to access the service themselves. Yeah, it's trying to. One thing we say in the closing script is, if you know of any guy that could benefit from our services, please tell them that we exist, but be aware that it has to be their choice to join. The most we can do is make them aware that we are here and that they are welcome. So it's challenging. You know, I've had my own experiences with partners or loved ones where I've tried to get them help. I've tried to tell them of all the resources that are available to them, put them in contact with them, but they won't take that step. And nothing I say I'll do will help that. However, as a charity, if they're willing, if they want to talk to somebody just one-to-one, just in a phone call, in an email, then we are happy to do that for them. So we can just try and remove that final barrier for them and just take away some of that fear of the unknown.
Brilliant. And it is that old taking the horse to water, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we want to gently guide them, and they're drinking the water has to be their choice.
Can I say as well, one of the biggest things is some guys think that their problems aren't big enough to access support. And that's a huge, huge thing. They don't think they're worthy of support. They think somebody else has it worse off than them. They think they're being not manly enough by having an issue in the first place. And secondly, the fact that they need to access support. And it's all rubbish. You know, it's these social conditioning that we've had. It's these stories that we tell ourselves, or, you know, if we've had trauma in our past that other people have told us and we believe those stories that people have told us. And it's trying to undo those stories and those messages that we hold as true, you know, and that's a big way of, like, if somebody can come into our service and just talk to us initially, and we can show them everything that you're going through is completely valid. No matter if you think it's big or small, like trauma with a capital T, trauma with a small t, it's all relevant. We're not here to measure your difficulty against somebody else's. We're going to value you for who you are, what your experience is, and you're welcome in our space. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and people, I mean, we should be taught a little bit more, shouldn't we, really? In my opinion, primary school, we should be taught about the kind of things and when we should be looking to have some help, because like you say, whether it's a big issue, or even a small one that is seeming, because sometimes it's those little issues that tip people over the edge, isn't it?
Yeah.
All of them are important, and all of them can be supported and helped with a fresh way of thinking. And so knowing what you've done both in the community, so I know Harry's going to talk a little bit more about community, aren't you? Knowing the ways that you've helped, can you give us some examples of the kind of results that have happened as a result of either meeting people for the first time in a community, sort of? So I know, for example, Joe, you meet lots of people and you get talking to them, as well as the circles. What kind of results can you, just obviously confidential, leaving the just generic, what kind of results can you give us examples of?
So I can give you an example of a new sort of community work that we've been doing. So we've just done a big roadshow, we've been calling it, through CAF Rail, which is a rail parts distribution centre. So it's a Spanish company that's got 13 depots in sort of like around here, Liverpool, Birmingham and Manchester, etc. And the girl that's just come into their company as the HR and wellness coach, and she's amazing. So she wanted Mentell in there after spotting a beer mat in a pub and ringing me and talking to me about it. So we went in, the first one was at Stockport, and we learned a lesson. Each one we've learned a fantastic lesson. So we went in the first one and just told them all about Mentell. However, we didn't get much feedback. It was a bit like, oh, it's like plaiting fog, you know, it was really, really difficult. But when we realised that these railmen have come down from generation to generation to generation of hard railway men, that it's drummed in them to be hard workers, to not talk, to not show vulnerability. And then the second one we did, we changed it around a little bit. And 3 men signed in from that event on that day. So we're always trying to do something different, be somewhere different, you know. So we've done about 13 depots all the way through Northwest, and 20 men have now signed into Mentell. 20 men that I would say are real hardened men because of their job, because of their social lives, you know, with the parents, the grandparents, the talk that goes on in that sort of households. So yeah, we broke down the barriers, and that's what we started to do now. We're going in some businesses now, working alongside the HR teams and the wellness coaches. But yeah, it's really, really difficult. You know, I did a talk in there, and the talk is, I just tell people what my story is, and tell them how good Mentell is, and tell them how we work, and you'll be surprised how many men do actually talk back to you. It's you know, you lay your soul bare. Sometimes there's tears, sometimes there isn't. That's the way it is. But yeah, one man actually opened up about his breakup with a relationship, and he drove his motorbike at a wall. Nobody in that room knew that. They'd worked with him for 30 years. Nobody in that room knew that. But as Christian said, it's like dropping gold dust when you lay yourself bare and put your soul on the line. It's powerful. So that's what we've started doing now, as well as doing the pubs and the bars and things like that. We're going into some businesses, and we're calling them roadshows. Just for want of a better word, you don't want to go in a workplace and call it a mental health well-being exercise, because it puts people off straight away. But we're coming for a coffee, and you know, we'll just sit and have a chat, and it works. 20 men have signed up through 13 depots that we've been through. So, and I know one of them was 6 weeks ago, and this week 2 men from that depot have signed up. So it might be slowly catchy monkey, but you know, we're just drip feeding that information to them. They're going away, checking us out, maybe having a conversation with the HR teams, and they're signing up. So I hope that answers.
And I don't even think that's slowly. Knowing kind of like how difficult it is for men and women to actually make those first steps. And you're quite right. You know, I think a lot of people have done mental health stuff to death. don't want to know. And I also, I still come across, there is still a stigma with being recognized as having a mental health issue. People don't want people to know that we've had a struggle, that we're not in a great place. And
Yeah.
I come across in the workplaces, for example, there are a lot of people this year, for example, where they've got to getting disciplined and they're on their final warning for low performance, for making mistakes in their work. And often they bring me in, kind of like, right, okay, they pay for me to go work with them one-to-one. And it's because they've got so much stuff going on in their home, divorces, bereavement, lots of stuff. And then the mind can't focus. And then they're feeling judged at work. They're scared of making a mistake. And the more scared of making a mistake they are, the more mistakes they make. And so it really, are we actually getting better with improving mental health? There's a big question for you all.
I know. So
how are we doing?
Well, I think so, and I think at CAF Rail, so this is who we've been working with, they're paying for Mentell to go in here. But as I say to them, for every £1 you spend on Mentell, you are saving £5 in your workforce because your staff aren't going off sick. And I did a boardroom meeting where some of the directors had flown in from Spain to come to this meeting. And as Maureen will know, I'm not a very confident public speaker and my knees were knocking, but you know what?
Can I just say, you should be, because you're brilliant. Move on.
Only because I've been Maureened. But I went in there and I thought, you guys are having it. You know, I just thought, yeah. And I told them, you know, how you want your workforce to behave starts with you guys. If you guys aren't honest and open and sharing your stories and your thoughts and your feelings with amongst your colleagues and your staff, you're on a losing streak. If you go in there and you're vulnerable like they are, they're going to think, what a great company is this? Not only are the bosses speaking to us on that level, but they've brought a charity in to support us as well. So not only do I do the guys on the shop floor, I'm going for the big boys as well, because I think, you know, it starts from the top, and that's what we've got to do. We've got to get in that boardroom and like Christine says, model that vulnerability all the time.
Yeah, recognizing it. And recognizing it is hard to be human,
yeah,
sometimes more than others, and that's just okay. And it's a temporary, and that's the thing. It's a temporary phase, isn't it? Dependent on what we do and how we manage our mind. Now, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, Harry, triggered my mind into. There is an animated video for Mentell, isn't there? Or is hopefully there still is.
Yeah.
Of the loosening the load.
Yeah.
Do you want to just talk us through that, and also can you guide us to where we can see that? Because when I first watched that many years ago, it was so deeply profound and it just said so much.
Yeah, so the video's on the website mentell.org.uk. It's also on the Facebook page as well. And like you, I was totally mesmerized by that video because it just encapsulated everything that I was going through, and it's so powerful. So it's a guy carrying a big orange bag with him. It's got all his worries, all his troubles with him, and you can see he's physically being pulled down by it, and he's trudging along, and he finds a Mentell circle, and he goes and visits the circle. He takes part in it, and he comes out, and his bag is now empty, or emptier than it was. And it just signifies everything that goes on in Mentell circles and what we're here for, to help people lighten their load, to empty their bag. Because I think, as Joe said to me right at the beginning when I started with Mentell, it might be just one person who stubbed their toe and that's it, they've had it, you know, and the whole bag just falls apart. It's just such a powerful video, and I encourage everyone to go and watch it. It's about 2 minutes long, won't take too long out your day. But I also wanted to just come back on the previous question you asked about, are we making progress with mental health? Absolutely, categorically, yes, we are. I think everybody has recognized that we're all suffering in some way or another. I think the last 2 or 3 years has exacerbated all of that. It's brought everything to the forefront. And just from the community work that I'm doing down here in Surrey, like I've set up 100 venues for the Turn Your Bar Blue campaign. I'm now connecting with social prescribers, GP services, voluntary services, independent charities. Every week when I log into my emails, my inbox is full of people wanting to connect. They're like, we want to know more about you. We know people who would benefit of your service. Like shortly before this call, I had a phone call with someone who I met at a mental health forum on Tuesday afternoon, saying, oh, I need to refer someone into you. How do I do it? And it's just like, it's incredible. And, you know, the pubs we set up right at the beginning, back in March, April time, I've been going around topping them up. And all their displays of leaflets and cards are empty. And you're just like, wow, this is having an impact. Even though we might not see these guys coming through right now and using the service, we know they're aware of it. And to answer a previous question you asked as well about how do we encourage people to use the service, it's all about being gracious and being subtle about it and not going head on, you know, you're mentally ill, you need to go and use the service. Sometimes when I'm out in the community and I see someone looking over at what I'm doing, I'll just give them a couple of cards and say, hey, take a few of these cards. If you know someone who might be benefit using the service, pop it in your pocket and pass it on to them. So I'm not saying that they need to go and use the service. I'm just planting that seed with them. So it's all about being gracious and being aware of the words that we're using. And you know all about that, Maureen, with NLP. It's just being subtle and gracious and treating each other as a human being. We've lost our connection with each other for hundreds and hundreds of years. And everyone is becoming so aware of that. Like Mentell has just opened my mind totally to everything. I found people who I never knew existed 2 months ago and the great work they're doing. And it's about all of us working together. As Christine said, there's no ego in this. If you don't resonate with Mentell services, we'll help you find somebody else you might resonate with. So it's all about being gracious and like, I didn't realize how bonkers it would be down here in Surrey. It's absolutely mental right now.
Which is wonderful. And I'm guessing that after lockdown, we're rebuilding this, how to connect with people, how to communicate with people again. And I'm coming across as a real hunger to be connected, but there is also a fear. And maybe that's a fear of rejection. And so when, for example, I'm encouraging, because I know Joe will talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime, any place, anywhere. And I'm a little bit the same. And
she's got me doing that now as well.
Fantastic. It works. It's great. And so I often say, dependent on the person, because you can kind of like judge their resistance. I wonder what you'd make of this. I'd love to hear your opinion of how it works, how it might work for other people. I wonder what would happen if you went along planting those seeds. And so those kind, am I okay to do that with people that are just needing, and then the ones that are really needing? Is that okay for me to do? For the ones that I know it would benefit, to say, do you know, just go along and just see what happens. It might be useful to you in some way. Is that the kind of thing that you might encourage me to continue doing, or do I need to do it differently?
Well, I think as Christian said, there's no obligation for anyone to talk in those circles. And if they are just curious, they can come and do that. And as Christian said,
I've sent people that were curious. They've taken part. It's been life-changing for them.
Yeah. And then they can talk about their own experiences to other people, and it snowballs and it snowballs. And that's the best way, people giving their own experiences of the cycle, because there's only so much you can tell them about it. You have to experience it for yourself to know what happens.
Fantastic. And what's the planned expansion for Mentell?
So obviously we're doing the expansion down in Surrey, where Harry is at the moment. We've got the funding for that, which is absolutely amazing. We just got funding from the National Lottery for the next 3 years for my role as affiliate manager. So again, helping guys or other people as well, if they want to set up their own support group, they can either set up a Mentell group in their area, or if they want to call it Dave's Potting Shed, you know, and they have like a weekly meeting, then we can help them set that up as well. And again, just sharing our policies, procedures, safeguarding, and mentoring them on how to have a robust service that they can offer out into the community. So we've got I think we've got like a set number that we're trying to aim for, but anybody who's interested, they can get in contact with us over that as well. and that doesn't matter where in the country you are. If they want to set up their own group, we just try and request that they have a minimum of 3 volunteers that can come on board with us, and we can start that process with them.
Brilliant.
And also for the community side, we're starting a couple of new campaigns this year. We're going to start hitting grassroots football clubs in our commissioned areas, where we're going to set them up with a bar pack, but we're also going to be asking them, can we bring our gazebo down for a match game? Can we do a card handout? Can we do some collections? Just having a visit, you know, it can be about 3,000 men at a football match. So we're going to do some football matches and do some cricket clubs as well. So they're two new campaigns that we're going to start hitting this year. Hopefully that'll bring some, raise some awareness, you know, amongst footballers.
Wow, yeah, there is so much there's such a need out there, isn't there? And what was I going? Oh, I had a really good question. Oh, it's just flown out of my head. It'll come back. Thinking about facilitators. So you train all the facilitators to. One of the things I like about Mentell is uniformity, if I can call it that. Wherever you go, you know that it's Mentell. So you know that the standards of Mentell. Now, do facilitators have to, so could it be, I know organically you grow your facilitators from within. If, say, for example, somebody might have the skill set, but doesn't currently have any problems, willing to come and just observe and take part, is it possible for them to become facilitators as well?
Yeah, it is. So part of the pathway is we invite guys to come along to 4 circles. So even if they've not got any issues or problems, they just have to engage as a service user for 4 sessions. So very minimum, they just have to check in with a number between 1 and 10, and then just engage in the process. So again, even if they don't want to talk, that's absolutely fine. But once they've been to those 4 circles, we then invite them along to a one-to-one, ask them a bit about who they are, what they do, what their lived experience is, and what the reasons are they'd like to become a facilitator. And once there's no red flags in that area, we then start them on the facilitator pathway. And then we just build on the skills that they already have and give them some of our own in-house training. And that process can take anywhere, generally 6 to 12 months until we sign them off on being a facilitator, just to make sure that they're comfortable and happy and safe in what they're doing, and that they're not going to be triggered necessarily from anything that happens in the spaces.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And also, we've all got issues. So even if somebody who's like, you know, I'm really happy right now, come and take part, they'll even possibly get some benefit from it as well, because we're forever learning.
Yeah, 100%. And me as well, like if I think about my journey with Mentell over the last 2.5 years, those times when I've had life events happen, I've taken a step down from being a facilitator, you know, so for maybe a month, I've not facilitated at all. I've just come in as a service user. And then, you know, somebody else plugs that gap, steps up and is able to take over the ones where you're facilitating. So it's recognizing that we are all human and that we all have good days and bad days and challenging days, and we support each other through that.
And that, I think that's an incredibly powerful message, because we are where we are, but we're human. We can be fragile.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, how do because when you're a facilitator and you're managing it all, how is that in terms of guys saying, oh my God, you have problems too, you have issues too?
Yeah.
How do they respond with that? How does that help them?
Even in circle, you know, week to week, when I might be averaging like an average 7, like day to day when everything's okay in equilibrium. But when I'm in the spaces, you know, and I'm checking at like a 5 or a 4, or sometimes I've done a 3, and guys are like, wow, you know, you seem like you've got it together all the time. I didn't think you had any problems or any issues. And just like, no, I've got just as many as you. You know, it's just, you know, just because of this role that I have, you know, I'm holding the space, I'm facilitating the space. But when it comes time for me to open up, being authentic and being open and honest about what my own issues are, guys are just kind of blown away then, you know. And again, it just gives them that permission to talk openly and honestly about what they've got going on too. Yeah,
because we're all human, aren't we? I remember the online, and my feeling, because it was genuinely, I felt great, and so I said an 8 out of 10, and really, you know, it felt great. But then once I got talking, Joe will remember, I'm sure, I just burst into tears. And it's like, where has that come from? Even though things were just feeling completely fine, then, you know, it just, it's like, where has this come from? And what was beautiful was Pete that was facilitating. He just managed it beautifully. And by the end of my talking, I felt great.
Yeah. And we have guys that happens to, you know, in our circles. You know, sometimes I'll just be talking and then they'll just totally break down and cry. And we'll just hold them in that space. What I mean by hold, I don't mean like we'll physically give them a hug. I just mean we'll be there with them. You know, we won't try and interject. We won't try and like offer solutions or say they're there. It's just literally being with them and just giving them the space to be able to express that. You know, because so many times we try and shut down our emotions or suppress them. And something you said before as well, you know, like the stress bucket that we have, we compartmentalize so many things in our lives to the nth degree until it gets to the point where this stress bucket is absolutely full to brimming. And like you said, you might stub your toe and then all of a sudden it all comes pouring out at the most inconvenient time for you. You know, where it might be that you're in a business meeting, it might be that you're with your partner, you might all of a sudden like let your kid have it full force. And it's like, you know, it's trying to give you a way of managing and some spaces where you can actually talk about these things on a regular basis. And that's what it is for most guys. It's a weekly manageable way of them coping with whatever they're dealing with in the day-to-day life.
And there is magic in that space. There is magic when you're in that vulnerable place, for just people to just be there with a sense of peace without judgment. That is so powerful.
Huge.
Hugely. And it really is, in my thinking, is simply magic. And the effect, it's just beautiful and wonderful. And I think, you know, we need even more of it.
Yeah,
so we're coming towards the time has passed so quickly. I think we could go on for another hour, but other meetings to go to. So before I ask you how to connect with Mentell, etc., one last word from you all. Anything that you'd like to say, maybe to encourage somebody else, or anything you like.
From me, if somebody's curious about it but they're still apprehensive, get them to contact us, get them to send us an email, reach out, and we'll have a chat with them one-to-one, and we'll just break down that last barrier for them.
Yeah, the same. It's just that referral link, which is on the website, and you can self-refer in. So self-refer in for that 10-minute phone call, you know, that can help alleviate a lot of thoughts that you might, you know, things that will rage around your mind. Who are these guys? You know, come and have a phone call. It's on the website. You can sign yourself up, refer yourself in.
I just wanted to say to any guy out there listening to this, that you're not alone. There are people out there willing to help and support you, and just find the courage to come to a Mentell circle. If you don't like it, fine, you're not obliged to come back. But if you are struggling, there's tens of hundreds of men in Mentell willing to see you do well.
And whatever you're going through right now, painful though it might be, there is a future. There is light, even if the tunnel is very, very dark. So thank you so much for giving up your time and your sharing your stories. So tell me the email address of Mentell. How do we contact Mentell? Not the email, the website address.
It's mentell.org.uk.
Brilliant. And that's where we can go and see that fabulous animation.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that I've actually had guys who are a little bit resistant go and have a look and, you know, guide them towards it. So thank you so much for giving your time. Good luck with the continued expansion and helping even more. I know that you've saved lives from the small group of people that I know that have connected. I know you've saved lives as well as helped families, individuals, you've helped people in their careers. So for the ripple effect, so it's not just the guys, it's their families, friends, their workplaces, everything, how Mentell has really made a big difference. Thank you so much. And yeah, go Mentell. And
thank you. Really appreciate your time today, Maureen.
No, it's been absolutely wonderful. So everyone check out Mentell, watch this again, make a note, get information from it, and let's help everybody live their best lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.